Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 episode number 127 based on novel. So let's start. Xiao Hong Chen and Meng Hong Chen weren't the two frontmost members of the Sun Moon team. Instead, up front was the tall and burly man called Qiu Yi. His complexion was very tan, and he was more than 2 meters tall. From the looks of it, he weighed at least 150 kilos. His muscular arms were even thicker than Wang Chao's waist. As he stood there, he looked like a human bear. The Hong Chen siblings were standing behind Qiu Yi. Behind the two of them were Lan Xiu and Yi Nongfeng. Ding Xiaobu was the furthest back. The Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy formed a very weird rhombus-shaped formation. A triangular formation versus a rhombus formation. The auras of both teams were already in a state of mutual hostility even before they started fighting. Both parties, please get ready. For some reason, Zheng Zhon started to feel very nervous. However, he was also very excited too. This fight had to be the pinnacle of clashes in the younger generation. As the referee, he was also eager to see who would win. Begin. As Zheng Zhon shouted, this battle of glory and qualification between the top Soul Master Academy and Soul Engineering Academy on the continent started. Wang Chao lifted her right hand and the golden dragon spear appeared in her palm. After that, she leapt forward and pulled her right hand back. She seemed like she was going to fling her spear. On the other side, Qiu Yi felt his goosebumps rising when Wang Chao did this. He roared as he thought about how Wang Chao was going to tear him apart. His hands clasped in front of him, and a huge circular shield appeared in his palm. This circular shield was silvery white. It had a protruding circle in the middle, and there were flowery patterns all over it. These patterns released gentle soul power undulations. In the center of the shield was a silvery white gem as large as 2 fists clasped together. As he unleashed this shield, a wave of silver light shone from the gem as Qiu Yi poured his soul power into it. This silver light engulfed the entire shield, and even all his teammates behind him. After that, an icy blue halo could be seen extending from Qiu Yi's feet. This halo started to spread until it covered the entire stage. Wang Chao wasn't just striking a pose. However, she didn't accumulate her power this time. In the next instant, her spear turned into a streak of golden light that shot straight towards Qiu Yi. A piercing sound reverberated throughout the entire stage. She unleashed her weapon the moment the fight started. What strategy was that? Ads by Pub Future. She followed her spear. Wang Chao touched her toes to the ground and burst forward like a bolt of lightning. Intense golden soul power was released from her body. Her first and second soul rings lit up, and dragon scales covered her body. Her teammates weren't slow, either. First, 4 streaks of lights landed on Wang Chao's body simultaneously, which caused her to shine even brighter. Shrek's team had Ning Tian, who possessed the 7 Treasures Glazed Pagoda, the best auxiliary type martial soul in the world. She was controlling 4 enhancements at the same time. It was her limit. With her support, Wang Chao's aura surged. Dai Huabin, Zhu Lu, Lan Susu, and Lan Luoluo also burst forward at the same time. They divided themselves into 2 groups and lined up behind Wang Chao. Ning Tian's right palm was extended to one side of her body. Her 7 Treasures Glazed Pagoda started to shine, and streaks of flowing light shot out of her hands. A bright silver shuttle around 2 meters long appeared in front of her. As she stepped onto it, she drifted up a few feet and followed the others. Cao Jinxian also unleashed his martial soul. The magical time-elapsing clock shone brightly behind him. However, he didn't use any soul skills at this point. His gaze was focused on the entire stage. As the golden light shot forward, Qiu Yi shouted and used his shield to block. Dang! The golden light was deflected with a loud ringing sound, and returned instantly to Wang Chao's hand. Qiu Yi took 2 steps back as the shield in his hand was struck by the spear, rippling with intense undulations of silver light. While Qiu Yi was only a 5-ringed Soul King and Class 5 Soul Engineer, and his shield was a Class 6 Soul Tool. Among Class 6 defensive type Soul Tools, it was one of the best, and super rare. It was a foot thick, and weighed more than 500 kilos. Even so, it suffered under Wang Chao's spear, showing how strong Wang Chao was. It was very difficult to imagine that she possessed such great strength. However, the Sun Moon team started to retaliate at this point. The icy blue halo spread further and further. It was the lethal poison of the vermilion clear ice toad. Once this lethal poison spread, Shrek's fighting abilities were bound to be greatly depleted even if the fight couldn't be immediately ended. It was one of the most lethal weapons that the Sun Moon team could use. Ice toad venom and ice venom ring. The 2 teams had already covered more than half the distance between them as Meng Hong Chen deployed her soul skills to their fullest. Wang Chao was the first to charge into the world of poison. Not only that, but 9 balls of silver light also rose behind Qiu Yi's back. These 9 balls of light drifted up into the air and formed an arc. Following this, 9 streaks of silver light shot out at the same time. They wove a web of light in the air, blocking Wang Chao's path. The golden dragon spear swept out and clashed against the silver web. However, something strange occurred. Wang Chao's strength lost its effect for the first time. She was struck back by a strong rebound force. Ads by Pub Future. Behind the Hong Chen siblings, Lan Xiu's eyes shone with silver light, and her hands were moving rhythmically. The 9 balls of silver light revealed they were 9 silvery metal balls, each of them as large as a human's head. Lan Xiu was the Sun Moon team's main control-type soul master. This was also why Xiao Hongchen was very respectful towards him. A control-type soul engineer was very rare among soul engineers, but Lan Xiu chose this weird cultivation method for himself. These 9 balls of silver light were called the 9 glories. Before he started learning soul tools, he was already using the 9 glories. Initially, they were created for him by his father. However, they were only a set of Class 2 soul tools back then. Lan Xiu had continuously perfected them using his talents and practiced his control of them. It must be said that he could only create such soul tools even though he was a soul engineer. The 9 glories were actually 9 separate soul tools. They belonged to a category of soul tools called deflective rays. These rays were special light waves. They could deflect any type of attack. At the same time, controlling 9 soul tools at the same time wasn't an easy feat. In addition, they had to be coordinated with one another. Lan Xiu was a rare spiritual type soul master. However, his spiritual power was very pure, and couldn't be unleashed through an intermediary like Hu Yuhao's spirit eyes. Without his soul engineering profession, he might even be unable to fight anyone. No one would have bothered to nurture him, either. However, things were different now. Based on his extraordinary spiritual power, he had displayed an extraordinary talent in using and controlling soul tools since he was young. The 9 streaks of silver light intersected in the air and seemed to form a barrier that resisted Shrek's first wave of attacks. "I'll hold Wang Chao. Go and settle the rest," Lan Xiu shouted. As Wang Chao was struck back, she lifted her head to look at the 9 balls of silver light. She raised her golden dragon spear once again. This time, she aimed at the sky. The 9 glories were also experiencing rapid changes in the air. The 9 metal balls gathered together, and 9 streaks of silver light shot out, forming a clump of silver light that came crashing down towards Wang Chao. Wang Chao flung her golden dragon spear out, but it was deflected back by the clump of silver light. Following this, Wang Chao punched out with all her strength and struck the clump of silver light. It was destroyed, but she was also forced back more than 10 meters. Her distance to the Sun Moon team increased. Beneath the stage, the expressions of everyone from the Tang sect changed when they saw this scene. They are targeting Wang Chao too much. The deflective rays were a huge obstacle to Wang Chao and prevented her from using her strength. This greatly restricted Shrek's abilities. Just as Wang Chao was forced back, another person appeared beside Chao. Rings of light shone from his body and rose. Barrel after barrel quickly took form as these rings of lights fused. This person was Xiao Hongchen. 2 yellow, 2 purple and 3 black soul rings rose from his feet. 7 soul rings. He had 7 soul rings. He was a soul sage. This was the first time in the history of the tournament that a soul sage had appeared. Even in the history of Shrek Academy, there had never been a 20-year-old soul sage before. However, Xiao Hongchen had achieved this feat. Countless rounds of artillery fire were unleashed. Dai Huabin, Zhu Lu, and the Lan sisters were all engulfed, unable to advance. Ding Xiaobu had already disappeared behind the group and initiated an attack against Shrek's team. Shrek's team was completely suppressed now. No one had expected such a situation. The Sun Moon team had been concealing their abilities until now. Xiao Hongchen hadn't fought at all before, and only revealed his extraordinary gifts at this point. It was an honor to become a soul sage before the age of 20. In fact, only Xiao Hongchen knew the price he had paid for this. In the next 5 years, his cultivation wouldn't see any further improvements. He made this sacrifice so that he could become a soul sage before the tournament. It was very difficult to tell how he might improve in 5 years' time. However, he didn't have any regrets. He wanted to beat all his opponents and reach the highest peak of the Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament. Countless cannon barrels fired off. Meng Hongchen also appeared behind him. She was wearing an icy blue suit of armor and holding a long blue sword in each of her hands. With the fastest speed she could muster, she burst towards Wang Chao. Her earlier surrender was tactical. She was going to defeat Wang Chao this time to save her reputation. There was another person behind Xiao Hongchen, Yi Nongfeng. At this point, Yi Nongfeng lifted a special soul tool to his shoulder. The back of the soul tool was cylindrical, while the front of it was full of coils. Rings of glaring light were undulating without any rhythm on these coils and gathering towards the triangular tip of the soul tool. Yi Nongfeng's nickname was the Destroyer. His abilities weren't that great, and his one-to-one combat abilities were extremely weak. However, he specialized in creating and using all types of unidirectional offensive soul tools. He was willing to sacrifice everything to pursue this extremity. Such a person possessed great strength when used in a team fight, just like the Tang sect's Eye of Fear. He also possessed the ability to turn the tables in a fight. He and Qiu Yi were a combination. He was in charge of attacking, while Qiu Yi was in charge of defense. They were initially secret weapons that were brought in as substitutes. However, a few of the Sun Moon team's main team members had been killed by the Tang sect, so they now had no choice but to fight. They were now revealing their true abilities for the first time. Up on the main stage, the pale-looking Shu Tianran finally smiled. He looked at Jing Hongchen and heaved a sigh of relief. He said, "Hallmaster Hongchen, you are really good at hiding things. These young people are the future pillars and talents of the empire." Jing Hongchen sighed and replied, "My grandson was very stubborn when it came to this tournament. To be honest, he consumed some special medicine to enable himself to cross the rank 70 barrier and become an advanced level soul engineer. However, he'll be affected by that medicine for the next few years. Before he's 25, I'm afraid he'll be unable to make any further improvements." Shu Tianran said seriously, "His spirit is commendable. He's willing to sacrifice for the glory of the country. No matter what happens to the Sun Moon team in the end, he'll be a pillar of our empire in the future." Jing Hongchen was relieved after hearing Shu Tianran's words. He was also very excited right now. As long as his grandson and granddaughter could defeat Shrek's team in this fight, they would make history for the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. The four who burst forward with Wang Chao didn't panic because their opponents demonstrated great strength. The four of them gathered together, and layers of light started to spread rapidly, forming a huge protective net that covered all four of them. This was the Land Sisters' soul skill, the hairnet. The four of them maintained their formation and quickly moved towards Wang Chao. With Ning Tian's enhancement, the Land Sisters' hairnet became very resilient even though they only had 4 rings. The hairnet managed to block all the streaks of lights that were fired towards them. However, it was very difficult for them to advance. Ads by Pub Future. Xiao Hongchen didn't panic at all. Lan Xiu and Meng Hongchen were enough to restrain Wang Chao. Not to mention that Wang Chao was depleted from the earlier fights. Could she resist the suppression of 2 Class 6 soul engineers even if she was in her peak state? Lan Xiu was also a Class 6 soul engineer. Otherwise, how could he possibly control the 9 glories, which were Class 6 soul tools? After Wang Chao was forced back, she didn't continue to fight her way out anymore. She started to shift positions quickly, and avoided the pursuit of the silver lights in the air. However, the 9 glories seemed to be alive under Lan Xiu's control. The 9 streaks of silver light intersected in the air. At times, they formed a cage. At other times, they formed a net. Wang Chao was greatly restrained, and couldn't get close to the Sun Moon team. Wang Chao still remained very persistent even though she was greatly suppressed. Her gaze was as cold as ever. Her spear kept on flashing, and she occasionally lifted her head to observe the 9 glories. She seemed to be waiting for something. At this point, Meng Hongchen arrived. Her pair of swords carried streaks of sword light that were unleashed towards Wang Chao. In the air, the 9 streaks of silver light descended at the same time. 3 streaks were aimed towards her right arm, while the other 6 wove a cage that moved towards her body. They seemed to be trying to pin her to the ground. As Meng Hongchen arrived, the vermilion clear ice toad's poison also started to engulf the entire Shrek team. However, a layer of blurry, golden light started to shine from everyone from Shrek's team. The golden glow didn't appear to offer any form of defense, but it managed to block out the poison. Shrek's team was prepared, knowing that Meng Hongchen could poison them. Shrek Academy had its own soul tool department too. Every member of Shrek's team was wearing a type of accessory known as a isolation-type soul tool. It could isolate all types of aura from one's body. Such soul tools were very effective against lethal poisons and polluted gases. They were specially used to resist the abilities of certain special martial souls. They could even isolate some special elements. Simply put, it could greatly isolate the fire elements of an opponent's attack even though the impact of the attack couldn't be avoided. Of course, there was a price to pay for using such a soul tool. The depletion from using such a soul tool was equivalent to a Class 5 protective soul barrier. Even if one wasn't attacked, the depletion would still persist. However, the effect was very useful for Shrek's team right now. They were isolating the poison from the vermilion clear ice toad. Wang Chao stood straight, without moving, as she faced a crisis. Against Meng Hongchen's sword lights, there was only a cold look in her eyes. "You are still so arrogant at this point." Meng Hongchen was furious now. Although she had conceded defeat earlier for tactical reasons, she wasn't convinced by Wang Chao at all. They were both soul emperors, and she even possessed the abilities of a Class 6 soul engineer. She didn't think she was inferior to Wang Chao at all. At this point, the 9 streaks of silver light that were crashing down towards Wang Chao stopped in the air. Ads by Pub Future. Yes, they stopped. Following this, a weird streak of light appeared above Lan Xiu's head. It was only large as a palm as it drifted above Lan Xiu, But Lan Xiao seemed very lost, and the 9 glories that he controlled started to dim. They weren't the only ones with a control-type soul master. Cao Jinxuan's first and fourth soul rings lit up at the same time. Just as the silver lights stalled in the air, Wang Chao exploited the flaws that had been exposed. She ducked out of the encirclement of the silver lights. Following that, she stabbed her spear ferociously towards her opponent's chest. Meng Hongchen's Class 6 ice swords couldn't compare to the Golden Dragon Spear in terms of length. Her sword lights had been unleashed towards Wang Chao's vital areas under the assumption that she wouldn't be attacked by the Golden Dragon Spear. Shit, their control-type Soul Master is up. Meng Hongchen didn't dare to delay any further. The chest portion of her armor cracked open, and a barrel the size of a human head popped out. A beam of intense light shot out towards Wang Chao. This was an extremely powerful Class 6 energy-gathering soul cannon. What about Wang Chao? She didn't even have any intention to dodge, and followed her spear. She was one with her spear. A sonorous dragon roar reverberated across the entire venue as her third soul ring lit up. A golden dragon head burst forward from her right hand. It seemed like it wanted to swallow the golden dragon spear. Boom! The energy-gathering soul cannon charge was instantly destroyed as it was struck by the spear. The indestructible spear continued to shoot forward. Its tip was about to reach the cannon's mouth. Meng Hongchen was horrified, and an icy domain shone beneath her feet. This was her third soul skill, Ice Reflection. Within the domain of the Ice Reflection, she could shift her body as if she were using instant teleportation. Her first thought right now was to avoid the spear. As a light flashed, Meng Hongchen shifted 3 feet to the side. The spear struck nothing, but Wang Chao landed following this. She forcefully stomped her right leg on the ground. Boom! When her right foot hit the ground, it felt as if a mature elephant had landed after jumping off a building. Immense sound waves and quakes affected the clashes in the other areas. The ground cracked open, and the domain formed by the ice reflection was immediately crushed. The spear generated a gust of wind as it swept across. It seemed to form a golden wheel as it shot forward. This was Wang Chao's fighting style, extremely strong and forceful. Meng, come back! Xiao Hongchen shouted. He had originally thought that Lan Xiao and Meng Hongchen would be sufficient to deal with Wang Chao. At least, he believed they could suppress her, and after he dealt with the rest of them, this team round would more or less be decided. Xiao Hongchen hadn't expected Shrek's control-type Soul Master to break Lan Xiao's control instantly, severing his connection with his 9 glories. This changed the entire situation. Meng Hongchen also wanted to return, but she had to handle Wang Chao first. Since she couldn't dodge, she could only sweep her swords and activate the abilities of these 2 Class 6 soul tools. An intense chill spread out from both swords. 2 streaks of icy blue light intersected as they shot towards Wang Chao. While my swords aren't as long as your spear, my sword lights are faster than you. However, Meng Hongchen didn't understand Wang Chao's character. How could she let Meng Hongchen escape with such a good opportunity presented to her? The red lights used to deal with Ding Xiaobu earlier appeared again. Wang Chao's eyes turned blood red. The golden scales on her body opened up, and her aura changed. The spear continued on its trajectory and seemed to completely ignore the 2 blades. You underestimate me too much. Meng Hongchen was furious. She couldn't dodge at this point. She quickly summoned her soul power. She thought to herself, I'd like to see who's going to be hurt more. Fut fut. Bang. The 2 light blades landed on Wang Chao's body first. However, Wang Chao didn't even move. The blades flashed once before dimming after they struck her. Her scales started to tremble violently, and her clothes were also torn in 2 areas. After that, Meng Hongchen flew back. A crisp, snapping sound rang out, and her Class 6 swords were broken into 4 pieces by Wang Chao's spear. After that, the spear struck Meng Hongchen in the chest. That banging sound was generated from the spear. Wang Chao's 4th soul ring also shone at this point. 4th soul skill, Golden Dragon Explosion. 6th soul skill, Golden Dragon's Bloodlust. Ads by Pub Future. With the help of these 2 soul skills, Wang Chao was in her peak condition right now. Why did she choose her Golden Dragon's Bloodlust? It was a decent soul skill for an ordinary soul master, but it was very average for a true, elite soul master. After all, this soul skill could only be used on 1 person. To most soul masters, using such a soul skill only increased their physical strength by 30%. The effect on their soul power wasn't too pronounced. However, it was different for Wang Chao. She possessed ultimate strength. How strong would she be if her physical strength increased by another 30%? Moreover, she would be in the bloodlust state of a golden dragon. The increase wouldn't just be 30%. In addition, she still had Ning Tian's 7 treasures glazed pagoda strengthening her. Her strength had reached a frightening level. None of the Sun Moon team understood Wang Chao, which left Meng Hongchen at a huge disadvantage. Meng Hongchen spat blood as she flew through the air. She collided with the barrier on the other side of the arena before falling to the ground. Not only were her swords broken, but the protective armor in front of her chest had also cracked. Her arms were hurt, and she was bleeding profusely. This attack hurt her internal organs. Meng Hongchen was critically injured. "Younger sister," Xiao Hongchen shouted. His eyes turned red, and he burst out. All his barrels combined to form a huge cannon that was more than half a meter in diameter before it fired towards the Lan sister's hairnet. At the same time, he rushed towards Meng Hongchen. At this point, a strange bolt of white lightning appeared silently in front of Xiao Hongchen. The bolt of lightning targeted Wang Chao, who was still in her original position after she took down Meng Hongchen. This bolt of lightning was too sudden. An intense glow quickly engulfed Wang Chao. It was so quick that she didn't have time to dodge. Wang Chao's body started to shake tremendously, and an astonishing scene appeared. Her powdery blue hair started to turn pale white. It lost its glow, and she fell to her knees. She was aging at an alarming speed. This was. Apart from Huo Yuhao, the rest of the Tang Sect's members stood up. He Kai too was the most shocked. This was a soul tool that he and Huo Yuhao had never seen before. These were aging rays. It was a new soul tool that the illustrious Virtue Hall had invented. Once one was struck by these aging rays, their life power would quickly be depleted and they would quickly turn old and frail. In a worst-case scenario, they might even die. If their life power wasn't replenished in time, or wasn't strong enough, they would die from old age. It was a powerful Class 7 soul tool. It was still in the experimental stage, and could only be used on one subject. The person who researched this soul tool was none other than the one using it right now, Yi Nongfeng. He was known as the Destroyer, one of the most extreme talents among the younger generation of illustrious Virtue Hall's disciples. He was only interested in soul tools that could cause annihilation. Wang Chao's forehead and right arm started to show wrinkles. Ads by Pub Future. After unleashing this attack, Yi Nongfeng also started to look very pale. He was only a Class 5 soul engineer. He had needed to use a milk bottle to activate this soul tool. More than 80% of his soul power had already been depleted, but his eyes were filled with a look of maniacal excitement. Wang Chao was the first human subject he had used this soul tool on, and its effects were very obvious. This aging ray was invented and designed by him, and some other strong individuals in the illustrious Virtue Hall then helped him to complete it. Jing Hongchen had deliberately modified this soul tool for him to use as a reward for his pioneering spirit. Indeed, it performed a miracle right now. Team leader, the rest of Shrek's team exclaimed at this moment. To them, Wang Chao wasn't just their team leader, she was their spiritual leader. If Wang Chao collapsed, their morale and fighting spirit would be gone. Bastard. The hairnet was destroyed. Dai Huabin activated his White Tiger's Devil God transformation to resist Xiao Hongchen's attack. Seeing that Wang Chao had descended to such a state, his eyes turned red. He peered into the sky and roared furiously. He used his right hand to pull Zhu Lu into his embrace. Instantly, a beam of strong white light shot into the sky. The entire stage turned into a world of black and white. A huge white tiger appeared from the sky, and seemed to traverse through space, instantly arriving in front of Yi Nongfeng, clawing at him. At this point, Lan Xiu also recovered from Cao Jinshuan's time lock, and quickly activated his 9 glories. He was about to stop the attack of the Netherworld White Tiger. However, the Netherworld White Tiger was a martial soul fusion skill. It was a skill that 2 noble families of the Star Luo Empire had combined to unleash for thousands of years. Their ancestors had even followed the first-generation sea god, Tang San, into the divine realm. The Netherworld White Tiger resisted the 9 deflection rays. After that, the tiger swept Qiu Yi to one side with its claws. Following that, it shut its claws and furiously attacked Yi Nongfeng until he was completely crushed. It was only when the 9 glories struck again that the tiger was forced back. Qiu Yi quickly returned in front of Lan Xiu, and his shield shone with silver light, boosting his defense to its maximum level. The attack of the Netherworld White Tiger had been too sudden, and it came when they were at an advantage. Yi Nongfeng's death was due to his carelessness. On Shrek's side, Dai Huabin and Zhu Lu weren't the only ones who acted. The Lan sisters also demonstrated their full abilities at this point. They held each other's hands and burst into the sky. In the blink of an eye, they filled the sky above the stage before descending. They were going straight for Xiao Hongchen, Meng Hongchen, and the 9 glories. This was their fusion skill, Empyreal Net. This was the true ability of Shrek's team. 2 martial soul fusion skills were used at the same time, increasing their fighting strength significantly. Of course, the price to pay for using these 2 fusion skills was also very big. After using them, their soul power would drop significantly. If not for the fact that Wang Chao was struck by the aging ray, they wouldn't have used their fusion skills. At this point, a figure silently crept up behind Wang Chao and stabbed a transparent draconic dagger towards the back of her neck. Ding Xiaobu, who had disappeared earlier, finally appeared. He had used some method to conceal himself temporarily. Team leader, Cao Jinxian and Ning Tian shouted at the same time. However, they had discovered it too late. At this point, the dagger was already stabbing towards Wang Chao's neck. As he looked at the pale, long hair in front of him, Ding Xiaobu's eyes were filled with excitement. If he could kill Wang Chao, there would be a great reward for him. Where was Zheng Zhon? When the Netherworld White Tiger appeared, he was already lagging. The situation was too complex. Wang Chao and the Hong Chen siblings had taken most of his attention. He hadn't expected a martial soul fusion skill to appear in front of Yi Nongfeng, who had lost most of his fighting strength. When he rushed over, it was already too late. Ding Xiaobu was also exploiting this distraction and attempting to kill Wang Chao. Wang Chao was on the verge of death. However, something strange happened. A white, icy flower started to bloom behind the back of her neck. As a ding sounded, Ding Xiaobu's blade was deflected away by the flower. Following this, a miraculous scene occurred. That icy flower rippled with rings of golden light. A weird light distorted the air. The entire stage was dyed golden, with Wang Chao's body the center of it. After this, a huge, golden vertical eye drifted up in mid-air, and gusts of air dragged Wang Chao's body upward. Every gust of air left a dazzling radiance around Wang Chao. Wherever they passed, pieces of armor would appear on her body. First, her chest was covered with armor. On this section of the armor, there were bright, flowery patterns. The icy flower kept on extending around her. What was weirder was that a vertical eye also appeared on Wang Chao's forehead. The eye was shining with golden light. On closer inspection, the light from the eye seemed to actually belong to. The golden armor quickly engulfed Wang Chao's entire body, her aura soaring. Sonorous dragon roars were ringing out continuously. Her pale white hair started to regain its glow and powdery blue color from the roots. An illusory, golden dragon-shaped projection started to revolve around her body. The armor behind her back was carved with the image of the Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion. However, her long hair covered half the image. Despite this, the scorpion tail that extended all the way to her hip region could be seen clearly. Wang Chao slowly stood up straight, like a newly born war goddess. She pointed her spear forward, and the golden vertical eye in the air suddenly turned into a streak of golden light before it descended. Under the illumination of the golden light, Wang Chao's entire body became 30% larger, and the golden dragon that surrounded her also seemed to turn real. What was going on? After he witnessed the changes to Wang Chao's body, Xiao Hongchen revealed a grim look in his eyes. Did she mutate? Is she from the body sect, and this is the second awakening of her body soul? How is this possible? Her martial soul is already so strong. If this is its second awakening, it completely violates the laws of nature. Ding Xiaobu, out. Just as Xiao Hongchen was in a daze, Zheng Zhon had already used his divine unbreakable shield to block the golden light that had almost pierced Ding Xiaobu's chest. This time, he was forced several meters back due to the impact, and knocked into Ding Xiaobu. Ads by Pub Future. Wang Chao, who was completely covered in armor, revealed a strange look in her eyes. She had mushroomed in size. She was like a Valkyrie that had descended upon the battlefield. Just one gaze caused Zheng Zhon to shudder. This aura. 9 streaks of silver light descended from the sky. The Netherworld White Tiger was deflected away again. It was a fusion skill that could be used continuously in a fight, which was very rare. However, its fighting strength would weaken as time passed if the user's cultivations weren't strong enough. After its initial outburst, the Netherworld White Tiger was restrained by Qiu Yi's Class 7 shield and Lan Xiu's 9 glories. On the other side, the Hong Chen siblings, who were trapped in the Empyreal net, also demonstrated their strongest abilities. Gua Meng Hong Chen let out a weird sound. Following this, she grew a size larger. She seemed to be lifting the sky with her hands before her 6th soul ring lit up. She was going to use her 6th soul skill, which she had never used before. She sucked in her gut and grit her teeth. She appeared ferocious now, even though she was bleeding profusely from her nose and mouth. Her back arched, and a bulge quickly rose. Layer upon layer of icy blue light started to rise continuously from her, and a terrifying aura was soaring. Xiao Hongchen was much stronger than his sister. A streak of dark gold light shone from his body. He fell forward and also let out the same sound as his sister before turning into a 3-legged golden toad. However, he only maintained the 3-legged golden toad form for a moment before another transformation occurred. He changed into a golden powder that quickly disintegrated before gathering together again. In the blink of an eye, he had turned into a huge soul fort with countless barrels. Countless streaks of light shot out and resisted the Empyreal net. There were even a huge number of soul rays that were aimed towards Wang Chao and the rest of Shrek's team. Ning Tian and Cao Jinxian were the focus of the greatest firepower. This showed that Xiao Hongchen could tell that the two of them were very important in enhancing Wang Chao's strength. Cao Jinxian and Ning Tian didn't panic at all. Ning Tian stepped onto her shuttle before landing in front of Cao Jinxian. Although her shuttle couldn't fly very high and could only remain 3 meters above the ground at most, it was still very quick. Following this, a layer of golden light lit up on her body. Invincible barrier. Xiao Hongchen was a 7-ringed soul sage and a class 7 soul engineer. The strength of the soul tools that he unleashed was extremely high. However, he couldn't overcome an invincible barrier used by a 5-ringed soul king. The appearance of soul tools gave many auxiliary-type soul engineers the ability to defend themselves on a battlefield. It wasn't something only realized in the Sun Moon Empire. The Seven Treasures Glazed sect had been very invested in soul tools over the past few years. Their aim was to mitigate the defensive weaknesses of their direct disciples. Ads by Pub Future. With the defense of the invincible barrier, Xiao Hongchen couldn't kill Ning Tian and Cao Jinxian without using his full strength. Compared to the two of them, the Lan sisters weren't doing too well. The two of them had used quite a lot of strength to unleash the Empyreal Net. However, there was a limit to how much their strength would increase even if they were using a fusion skill. Their control of the Empyreal Net could match up to a Soul Emperor, but they were facing a Soul Sage. Their Empyreal Net was quickly dispelled by the Soul Rays. The Lan sisters looked very pale. In such an intense fight, their inferior cultivations were still limiting factors. No matter what, there was still a gap between the overall abilities of Shrek's team and the Sun Moon team. A similar situation occurred for the Netherworld White Tiger. The illusory light from the tiger's body started to dim. Dai Huabin and Zhu Lu's fusion skill couldn't last any longer. While it seemed like Shrek had gained an advantage earlier, this advantage was now slowly being eroded by the Sun Moon team. Wang Chao moved at this point. She lunged forward with her left leg and her spear in front of Xiao Hongchen. She was very quick. It was very different from earlier when she had used her strength to enhance her abilities. Her spear thrust out, and the soul rays that were targeted towards her were destroyed. Her target was the steel fortress that Xiao Hongchen had formed. At this point, Meng Hongchen erupted after she completed her preparations. She bent forward and grabbed hold of her ankles. The bulge on her back burst open, and streaks of white, fluid light shot out towards Wang Chao. Even though there were only slightly more than 10 streaks of these lights, an indescribable, nausea-inducing feeling surfaced when they appeared behind her. Even Xiao Hongchen quickly backed off and increased his distance from his sister. This was the Vermilion Clear Ice Toad's 6th soul skill, Corrosive Ice. She condensed her poison into a fluid before combining it with her soul power. Not only was its impact force great, the intensity of the poison was also extreme. This was Meng Hongchen's most lethal soul skill. She had tested it once before. 1 drop of her corrosive ice was sufficient to kill a diamond mammoth, an extremely large soul beast. As for humans, even a soul Doluor wouldn't be able to handle the poison. 5 and 6 ringed soul masters' invincible barriers would also be completely corroded upon contact with her poison. More frighteningly, her corrosive ice could lock onto its target, and would pursue it. There was no way to avoid it, and it could pursue its target for up to a minute. The streaks of fluid that contained massive amounts of poison were targeted towards Wang Chao. Meng Hongchen was critically hurt by her earlier, and hated her immensely. She had used all her strength in this attack. Right now, her face was also very pale. The strength of her corrosive ice meant that she had used up almost all of her soul power. Its strength was equivalent to 3 6-ringed soul skills used by an ordinary soul master. Wang Chao seemed to sense something, and stopped. When the poisonous fluid was about to touch her, it suddenly stopped in midair, as if it had been frozen. It was converted into ice crystals, and the stench of the poison also disappeared. Meng Hongchen's life power seemed to have been sucked dry. Her entire face turned pale white, and she took 2 steps back. She lost control of her voice as she said, "Impossible, impossible. How can my corrosive ice be frozen?" She wasn't the only one who was surprised. Xiao Hongchen, who was clearly aware of his sister's abilities, was also astonished. He was in his martial soul true body right now. When he realized things were amiss, he changed form once again. The greatest strength of his golden toad true body was that it could quickly turn into a soul tool of any form. It was different from using soul skills. When he entered such a state, the soul tools that he agglomerated were no longer restricted by size, only by his own cultivation. It also meant that any soul tool that he formed now was at least class 7. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.